This is a City Council meeting to hear special recognitions and presentations. Council will not take formal action on the agenda items. All individuals wishing to speak may do so under petitions and requests. No sign-up card is required. Citizens will be given 3 minutes to speak. All sign-up cards and exhibits being submitted to City Council shall be placed in the box on the table.
The purpose of the City Council meeting is to discuss city business, and proper decorum must be displayed by all in attendance. Public input and participation is encouraged. However, all persons in attendance shall comply with the rules for meeting procedures and shall refrain from any action that disrupts the orderly proceedings of the council meeting or hinders a council from performing its duties. No person shall interfere with the rights of others to speak, hear, see, or attend the proceedings, make threats of violence, disrupt the proceedings with shouting, fail to confine remarks to the agenda item under consideration, nor continue to speak after the allotted speaking time has expired, as these actions shall be considered disruptive and disorderly. The mayor shall caution any person who violates these provisions and disrupts the orderly proceedings of the council meetings, and they shall be directed to comply. Any person who fails to comply as cautioned shall be ruled out of order, shall forfeit the remainder of their speaking time on the agenda item under consideration, and will be requested to return to their seat. Persons who fail to comply as directed shall be subject to removal from the council chambers by law enforcement or such other actions as may be reasonably necessary to enforce these regulations. Notwithstanding, the mayor may order the immediate removal of any person from the chambers who possesses a threat to property or life safety. Nothing in this section shall be construed to limit or restrict a person's right created by the Constitution, law, ordinance, or regulation.
For the invocation, we'll take a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. City Manager.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council. We have 3 items on this evening's presentations meeting. The first is 4A, the Employee of the Month for October 2025. And that employee is a member of the fire department, and his supervisor is here to present the nomination.
I think that's you.
Hit the button.
All right. Can you hear me okay? Hello, everybody. I'm Lieutenant Lane down at Station 13. I nominated my firefighter, Lucas Lamoth, for being that awesome employee, outstanding citizen, obviously. I wrote, on September 10th, 2025, firefighter Lamoth responded to a call involving a minor who was falling off his bike. After providing medical care, firefighter Lamoth noted that not only was the bike very old, but it had been severely damaged. During their interaction, he also learned that the child relied heavily on the bicycle to travel a considerate distance to school each day and was not eligible for bus transportation. Recognizing the importance of the situation, firefighter Lamoth went above and beyond the call of duty. Without hesitation, he purchased a brand new bike and lock for the child using his own personal funds. When his fellow department members learned of his generosity, many contributed towards the cost as a gesture to support his selfless act. Firefighter Lamoth's actions exemplify compassion, initiative, and an unwavering commitment to serve others, both on and off duty. He is a commendable member of our department whose kindness and dedication reflect the highest values of our profession. For these reasons, I strongly believe that he deserves the Employee of the Month, and I'm glad that he got it. He deserves it. Firefighter Lamoth.
You want to go?
Yes, sir. The next item is 4B, and that's PFM, our financial manager, will provide the city's portfolio presentation for fiscal year 2025.
Let's do a quick test. Awesome. Good evening, everyone. My name is Leslie Weber with PFM Asset Management, your investment advisor for the city's investment portfolio. We manage the portfolio to meet your key investment objectives of safety, liquidity, and yield, and in that order as these are public funds. I'm going to start off with making a few current market remarks, and then I'll go into the portfolio and talk a bit about the performance. So some of the high-level current market themes that we've seen. Firstly, the U.S. economy has continued to be pretty resilient, but we are seeing signs of a cooling labor market. And I'll talk a bit more about this in further detail here. Secondly, the Fed cut rates for the first time this year, 2025, at their recent September Federal Open Market Committee meeting. They did cut by 25 basis points, and the overnight rate is now 4% to 4.25%. And I'll talk a bit about why that matters to you as investors and how it affects the portfolio. Thirdly, Treasury yields did also move lower across the curve. I'll give you a visual of that as well, so you can see where rates are standing today. Now, with the Fed's dual mandate, they have a dual mandate of keeping unemployment low and keeping inflation in check. And it seems right now there's a lot of mixed signals just driving that economic uncertainty and the outlook. So they have a pretty difficult dual mandate to try and balance out right now. Starting out with some of the negatives here or the headwinds of the economy. This past quarter, there's been net new job creation of almost zero. So we are seeing cooling in the labor market. And it seems as though currently employers are taking more of a no hire, no fire type of approach. If we look at that other side of the Fed's dual mandate of inflation, we are seeing that a little bit sticky. They do want to bring that down to about 2%, but we're not seeing that just quite yet. And also increasing credit card balances as well. That continues to increase with consumer spending. And then that takes us to more of the neutral challenges of the economic outlook. So with tariffs, we thought they were, viewed as inflationary once they were announced, but we are seeing some of that slowing. It's not really being passed completely to the consumer. It seems as though right now the importers or the retailer are absorbing more of that cost before passing that on. And then also stabilizing credit card delinquencies. High credit card debt would enable those delinquency rates to go up, but we are seeing that stabilize. If you look at the chart on the bottom, during the great financial crisis, 2008, 2009, we did see that peak, and then during the pandemic, but now it looks like it's starting to stabilize there. And then some of the tailwinds are the positives. So the Fed's easing policy. It seems as though the Fed is on a rate cutting trajectory. I'll talk a bit about that, and I'll show you the dot plot as well. And then also the resilient consumer spending. The United States is such a consumer-driven economy, so that really matters when we go out and spend money. That really helps drive the economy, and you could see on the bottom there the personal consumption. Consumers are still spending. And then that leads me into the Fed. So this is their dot plot. This shows us where each voting member of the Federal Open Market Committee thinks where rates are going to be at the end of each year. Now, sometimes we have to take this with a grain of salt. Sometimes this chart is more wrong than it is right. But for 2025, they're expecting 2 additional rate cuts in addition to the one that already happened in September. But what's interesting here is for 2025, you see there's kind of a divide between the Fed. There's one group that's thinking no additional rate cuts, and then there's also a group that thinks there's 2 more additional rate cuts. A good probability, and the market's pricing this in for a rate cut in October, which we'll find out tomorrow, and then another one in December. And then as you see in 2026, 2027, maybe 1 25 basis point cut each for each of those years, and then the longer term or that neutral rate to get that back down to about 3%. But as investors looking at yields, this gives you a visual. We do like to look at U.S. Treasury yields because your portfolio, we do have a good amount of this because, again, it meets your key objectives of safety, liquidity, and then yield. So what this chart shows you is all the different maturities across the different yields that you see. The shaded area shows you the 1-year range where rates have been. The dotted line shows you where rates have been January 30, 2025. And then this past quarter, September 30, 2025, which is the solid line. So you see towards the front end of the curve or the shorter end of that yield curve, when the Fed did cut, you're going to see that front end go down and in tandem. So if they do cut in October and December, you're going to continue to see that go down. If you invest in money market funds, very short-term type of instruments, that's going to continue to follow, and you should expect to see those rates come down. But where the portfolio is, it's a little bit longer than that. We are investing in a 1 to 3 year strategy, so you should expect rates between the 1 and 3 year mark, and you could see across the curve that has fallen, and that's the market pricing in those expected rate cuts. So now I'll review the portfolio. So with the sector allocation analytics, this is what we plot here against your investment policy. So your sector allocations for each of these, what's actually invested against your sector maximums outlined in the investment policy. And you can see down the line there with the different sectors that you have, you're well in line with your investment policy. And the same takeaway for the maximum maturity analytics there. So the maximum maturity is about 5.5 years, and you could see all across those sectors that you're well in line there. So looking at the portfolio size as of September 30, 2025 is approximately $49 million. I did mention we are managing to a 1 to 3 year strategy, so a little bit longer than what's tracking the overnight federal funds rate. The overall yield at cost for that portfolio at that point in time is 4.44%. And if we look at your yield at market, that is a little bit lower because if we were to buy the same basket of securities on that day, September 30, 2025, because the market yields did drop, what you hold in your portfolio is yielding higher than what the market is at that time. Looking at the overall portfolio credit quality, AA, that's very high credit quality across the board there. Your portfolio is also well diversified across all the sectors you see on the upper right-hand side. So again, a good majority in U.S. Treasuries. And here is a sector allocation review quarter over quarter. I did want to note that you will see sectors and the allocations differ from quarter to quarter. As your investment advisor, we are an active investment manager. So depending on what is value added during that time and during that market and what's the market is doing, if we find something more additive than the other, we will change the allocation within that portfolio. And lastly, I'll hit a few points about the portfolio and its performance. What I will say is not only for the quarter, but for the year, 3, 5, and since inception, since 2006, this portfolio has outperformed the benchmark, and that's you all having a very flexible investment policy. Of course, there's parameters around that, but investing in things other than just government securities, so government type of securities. But if we just focus on the quarter, you could see about 1.28% for the quarter, which you've outperformed that benchmark of 1.12. And again, on an annualized basis at 4.42, again, outperforming that benchmark. And if we look at it on an accrual basis earnings, that total earnings there for the quarter, about $608,000, and then out 1 year, about $2.34 million. So we were in an elevated interest rate environment, and you could see that with the chart with the steepening of the interest earned. That really helped with the interest earned and also the overall portfolio performance. So are there any questions or anything you'd like me to elaborate on?
Council. Sounds like you wowed everybody.
Speechless.
Yeah.
Right.
Very much appreciate the presentation. As you know, we kind of look out into the future. I know it's hard to predict the markets and interest rates and everything else, but with the prolonged government shutdown, do you anticipate any effects on our portfolio and what we're doing?
I don't think so at this time. I would say the Fed, it seems as though they're data dependent and they're flying a little bit blind. We did see that CPI number being released. That's not the data that the Fed looks at, but we are seeing inflation increasing. But I wouldn't say that would affect our strategy. We're trying to meet, safety, liquidity. If there are liquidity needs, we're trying to manage to that, and then just sticking to the strategy. If we switch strategies back and forth all the time, that's not good, because historically speaking, longer term strategies, sticking with the strategy has really outperformed the shorter term market.
Thank you. And so you said about every quarter we're making about 600,000 a quarter,
This past quarter, yes.
approximately,
Yes.
in interest. About how much do we liquid to use for operation expenses, capital expenses on an annual basis here at the city?
Do you know that question?
We really don't use any of the investment money for projects. That sits there and it earns money. And it's there if we need to liquidate it for operating if we need to. So we don't use it for projects. We use operating for projects.
Gotcha. And that's why I was just asking is approximately how often a year, or if at all, do we, go after the piggy bank, basically? How often does
This year, we've gone twice.
Gone twice.
We went in August for $5 million, and then I think about 3 weeks ago for another $5 million. And that's not uncommon because we get ad valorem money in December. So as we're running towards the end of the ad valorem, it's common to liquidate funds at that time. I do hope to have a
set aside for a rainy day?
Yes.
And I was just curious about how many rainy days are we having? And, I'm sure, other than Sunday. And then also, I know we had to, write that big check for the fire truck recently. So again, I was just curious.
that came out operating.
Okay, cool.
And I do want to say that the fund that we did have to raise, we did sell it at a net gain, so it did not hurt the portfolio. And also, all the securities that are in the portfolio are very liquid, so that means, if Terry or her team calls us the same day, typically we could turn it over to make sure you have the cash you need.
Awesome, thank you. Hopefully, we're not
Apologize
paying
for
too
my
much
voice.
capital gains.
Thank you.
Thank you. City manager?
So the last presentation of this meeting is the economic development strategic plan, and you'll be getting a presentation, and at 6:30 meeting, you'll be asked to approve this plan.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Luis Nieves Ruiz. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council, and I was the lead for this project. I'll start the presentation by talking a little who we are. We are a council of governments located in Orlando, but covering an 8-county region. We have other 9 sister agencies throughout the state of Florida. And what we do is we specialize in providing technical assistance to local governments and organizations located within our service area. So this past, about a year ago, we started meeting with city staff just to discuss what would it entail to create an economic development plan for the city of Titusville. So great discussions there. So this is pretty much the methodology that we follow. We firstly have an existing condition analysis, where we look at all the conditions within your city, your people, economic and place-based assets. We also identify 10 corridors of economic significance for the region. We also have a very extensive public engagement process. We actually have 3 focus groups from city leaders. We had one for business groups, and we had one for residents. Using that information, we actually went in and created a SWOT analysis, looking at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then we use that information to develop goals and strategies for the report. So when we talk about economic development, we are looking for economic resiliency. That is the opportunity that if something bad will happen to your community, you're able to bounce back more stronger than you were in the beginning. So we follow this 3-pillar approach, people-based prosperity, because we want to be holistic. When people think about economic development, they usually want to think about business information or employment. Economic development is much more than that. So what we want to do, we want to, as long as we look at these assets, we identify and try to address what are going to be your vulnerability indicators. That's very important, because if you don't address your vulnerabilities, and drivers of vulnerability, you're not going to get better economic conditions. And this is applicable to multiple topic areas. So what we did, we basically look at your community, look at your assets, and we also, based on the location of the businesses, we identify what were 10 corridors of economic significance. These are the locations where most of your businesses are actually concentrated in. The corridor is the spine of economic development. If your corridor is not doing well, your economy is not going to be doing well as a result of that. So what we did is like we looked very thoroughly and we developed a series of metrics, approximately 30-something metrics that we measure. We look at your land use, economic vitality, which is the number of businesses, and we also look at environmental constraints. The public engagement part was actually really fun. Thank you to Stafford, Nicholas, and Brad for helping with this. We actually had really, really good feedback. Why we do this is here, we, as much as we love the city of Titusville, we don't live here. So it's always good to actually go in, take the results of the statistical analysis, present them to the community, and learn the context. Because economic development is all going to be about your context. Your history and geography are going to be very important to understand why you're in a situation where you're in right now. So we have anything from like businesses to anchor institutions, going to stakeholders. These are some of the people that actually join us. I was very, very pleased to see so many people in the business community actually participate in our like focus groups. I haven't seen this happen in many communities, so I think that that's a very positive factor here in the city of Titusville. So using this information, we create what is called the SWOT analysis. And the SWOT is very important here to understand that. What is your internal factors? Those are the things that you can actually control. Those are your strengths and your weaknesses. And then you have the external factors. And external factors, just like the previous presentation was saying, they're things that are becoming much more important and are having a bigger effect in our economy, but we have no control of. So what we did was basically, we look at your strengths. And we found a lot of really positive things. People complain a lot. And Titusville is the third community we actually look at in Brevard County. And what we found that was very different from other communities. Most of your residents actually live and work in Titusville. You know, I had in the South Brevard, we look at the two communities where most people actually leave the community to work. And you have people coming in because all those high-tech jobs actually are filled by people from outside. We didn't see that in Titusville, so you have the really good job skills match. There are also real opportunities to career pathways. A lot of people are really concerned, especially with this economy, where a lot of people don't seem to want to work. That's what they're saying right now. You actually found that your organization, your businesses, have the opportunities to actually bring residents right in and get them the certifications that they need. And that's really important. One of the things that I actually asked is like, I was very to the point, if I were to come from McDonald's today and I show up in your doorstep, can I get one of your jobs? And the answer, and this I believe was a Blue Origin who said this, like, yes, you can come in because we'll prepare you and have the certifications. This type of synergy is very rare to find in other communities. So it's definitely a strength that you have. You also have a very strong presence of industry clusters. The industry cluster is an agglomeration of export-oriented businesses. These are the businesses that they sell outside your community and bring more of the economic investment. So we certainly know that aviation and aerospace is really big in our area because we're very close to Merritt Island and NASA. But you have the presence of other businesses. One thing that we found that was really interesting, there was this outcrop of businesses that actually specialize in cooling technologies. A lot of them working with hydrogen. It's something that I had not seen before in our region. There are about 2 or 3 businesses. It's not a lot, but it's an outcrop of working in NASA. And that's an industry that can be exploited to hopefully help it become something else. Another thing that you have in your favor, you're a trail town. You have a trail town designation. You have about 2, 3 trails that either start here or converge here in the city of Titusville. That's something that not all communities have. So what we're trying with your strengths, when we want you to prepare for strengths. You want to reinforce what you have. So we reinforce what you have. What we're recommending is that you develop this business education task force. Why do we say that? Because the conversation that we had was very candid during the focus groups, and actually a lot of people were really willing to work with each other together. That's something that as a city you should keep cultivating. So that's one of the recommendations for economic development, to at least have that meeting once a year. We're also recommending that you attract more firms within these actually clusters that you have, because attracting doesn't mean that you're gonna have to go and search for a company in pharmaceuticals and somebody comes in and tells you, I wanna look at it in Titusville. But pharmaceuticals is not your strength. It's great if they come, and I'm not gonna tell you not to include them, but when you do economic development, try to still look for those aerospace companies, or those companies that were in the watercraft sector, or when it's satellite technologies or cooling technologies. We also are recommending that you develop some sort of economic trust fund or similar funding mechanism. Why are we saying this? One of the assets we originally had in the report was the Brevard Economic Development Zone. Nobody else had that type of district in the region. So as soon as we're almost ready, about a month before we're ready to submit the report, we learned that that program was eliminated. We know that we overheard that there's some money that's been left there. I work a lot with federal grants, especially with the U.S. Economic Development Administration. The first challenge that most jurisdictions have when they're applying for a federal grant is finding the match. If you have some money safe in some sort of fund that could be used as a match, and this is money that could be used for infrastructure, that could to attract new businesses, or it could be done for a lot of different projects. So that's very important that you think about that. We also think that your trail system right now is underdeveloped. You have a lot of great trails. People are really, really fascinated about it, but the trails need to be seen as an economic development tool. And what you need to do, your aerospace, your high technology economy is really strong right now. You sort of need to actually develop your leisure economy, which is currently underdeveloped. And you do have the assets to be able to do that. Weaknesses, and this is where it gets really strength, low level of participation. From what we heard from our businesses is that they're really cannibalizing each other, looking for people to work. And what we found out with the city of Titusville, this seems to be a Brevard County thing actually, is that the level of participation is actually extremely low compared to the national. National, you're talking about 62.6%, and Brevard and Titusville are both below 60%. We had been working with your economic development administrator on this grant called the Recompete Grant. And we actually were able to identify a series of 10 census tracts within the city of Titusville where participation is actually really low compared to what it should be, especially that prime worker people within 30 and 54. That's what we're looking at. And that shouldn't be the case because your median age is actually much lower than Brevard County. Why is your level of participation much lower than Brevard County? So there's no translation between having younger people and having more workers. And that's something that we need to really look at. A complaint we heard about was the lack of amenities. I will take this with a pinch of salt. I think for your size of community, and we actually did some of the analysis, you have a lot of the amenities that you really need. It's just being able to really show that you have them and maybe use them a little better. So what we're proposing, first of all, is to really think about how you're going to address this low participation rate problem. And by the way, this is really interesting because when we brought this discussion with CareerSource, it's that they had no idea what we're talking about. And a lot of them thought that a lot of these people not workers, they're just living out of investments or being influencers. Like, I'm almost 50. I cannot be an influencer anymore. We passed that age already. And a lot of these people already are past that age. We think that these may have been workers that stayed after the shuttle program ended and never really regained the skills to compete in the new economy. And based on what we've seen here, the businesses are willing to come in and trade them for those jobs. So what we're recommending is to try to survey some of these census tracts where you have a very low level of participation. We already identified those for you. And if needed, you can evaluate to create some kind of workforce entry program. Like, I volunteer for one for about 12 years called Just Partnership. And basically you get people from the street basically, and you get them through 12 weeks prepared to actually go to work and get a real job. The other thing we're recommending is the creation of a cultural national asset master plan. We think you have a lot of assets, you definitely have a lot of museums. It seems to us that they're not really working together as well as they could. Like, we think kind of like measuring this, how the leisure economy is working right now in Titusville will actually provide us kind of a couple of ideas to bridge some of the gaps we're currently having. Again, this is basically you're diversifying your economy in case something were to happen to the aerospace economy. Opportunities, we talk about space technology careers. You have a jewel right here with the Eastern Florida State College. Their facility is amazing. They provide a lot of certification programs that are really important. So there's definitely that demand still. We actually compare Titusville against other jurisdictions, and percentage-wise, you're doing better than other jurisdictions when it comes to these occupations. But we also heard that there's a lot of foreign companies, especially in aerospace and aviation, that are not able to get the right certifications to get into Merritt Island because they're foreign. They cannot get those certifications. You being located so closely to the island, maybe you're the location. There's a lot of large French companies, aviation companies, that maybe if we actually kind of like go in and talk to them, they will be willing to come here in the States. The other thing that we have is corridor redevelopment. We actually went around the city and looked around the city just to make sure, provide that context. And we've seen great redevelopment happening in US 1. We're actually very surprised, especially the old Sears Town Mall. But then we have other corridors that need a little more help. So there's definitely something that if we want to basically increase that leisure economy, we're gonna have to really work on next couple of years. So these are recommendations. So we want you to try to work to develop some of these global business connections. I think starting the conversation with Space Florida to maybe go, basically you can go and start talking to Space Florida to start connecting to those companies. Again, it's an asset. The airport right now, they're opening a couple of new industrial parks. In the next couple of years, they're gonna have to fill up. So better start that work now than wait until later. We also want to study the feasibility of establishing a business incubator within the city. That's a conversation we have already started. I connected your staff with the UCF incubator program. Right now, the financials, we're still working on them because it's getting a little more expensive than we were expecting, but we already started the conversations there. Then we also want you to revitalize those key corridors, and we specifically think Garden Street and Hopkins are the ones that need probably a little more help. Right now, my team we have a brownfields assessment grant. We'll be using some of that money to actually look at the Hopkins corridor and identify possible brownfields. That way we can get that information to your economic development staff, and they can start the conversation of probably applying for the program, at least assessing. So these are your threats. Childcare is a national problem. And it's not something that's specific to the city of Titusville, but it's something that we had to mention here because a lot of our young professionals in our tables mentioned it. Like, it's really hard to find good childcare in the city of Titusville. We also are telling you to just keep ahead and look at who's your competition in aviation and aerospace. Right now, we have their other clusters happening around, especially around Huntsville, Alabama. It's one of the ones that's like the biggest competition we have. You want to make sure that you're still making the right investments and staying competitive. We also think that the lack of economic diversity is a problem. Titusville has a history, we have a cyclical history. And every time we have like a new shuttle program coming in, basically we get a lot of investment and a lot of jobs coming in, then something happens at the federal level and boom, we basically go into recession for years. So how you prevent that is to actually diversify your economy away from aerospace. You'll still be attracting these aerospace companies, but at the same time, you want to develop other sectors that are gonna be so dependent on the federal government. Because even though these are private companies, they're still very heavily dependent on federal investment. Sea level rise is an issue. I know that you have a vulnerability analysis that's currently being worked on. What we're asking for, we worked in your previous analysis back in the 2019, I believe. And we found out that some of our corridors could be affected by sea level rise and storm surge. We're just asking that, yeah, look how you can probably fortify your corridors a little better if there was like something were to happen. I was telling your staff, we know what happened with all the rain that came out, and we don't know where that came from because there's no real system. These type of events are gonna become more common. And it's not only the coast. I have friends in Lake County, and they show me the pictures, and it's bad. So what you're gonna have to learn is how do we fortify ourselves a little more and prepare our communities to be stronger. We have a rainfall model that we developed through a CDG MIT grant. We'll be willing to share that information with you because you're one of our jurisdictions. So that's something we will keep helping. The other thing that we have is residential intrusion. You're an economy that's very dependent on manufacturing. And what happens is that when you have more residential areas coming in, the demand for residential, sometimes those residential areas try to locate near those industrial areas, especially now with the Leaf Local Act. That's a challenge because the Leaf Local Act allows for the development of residential in industrially zoned areas. Not much you can do in that case, but you still have to monitor what is happening because you don't want a lot of this industrial land to actually be lost because then you don't have the sites. I can tell you from my experience regionally right now, the region overall lacks enough sites. Like it's not only that people in Brevard County will be complaining, but in Orange it's the same situation. Seminole is the same situation. We don't have those industrial sites. We need to think about how we're gonna land bank some of these critical sites for new development because they take time to develop, but they're the ones that actually gonna bring the biggest economic boost when you come in. Like residential is not gonna bring that, sadly. So for threats, what we're saying here, we want to promote the creation of more home-based childcare facilities. This is just mainly looking at the regulations and making sure that they're not really obstructive when it comes to developing this. You also want to diversify the economy using the leisure hospitality sectors. Again, that national cultural plan we think is really important that you follow through. And then you try to maximize low-impact development strategies, especially on business corridors. So you basically reduce the amount of pervious surface, the impervious surface that is located like the concrete, and actually be able to have the water get through. So this is a last slide, some of my presentation. I'm willing to take any questions. My information is also here if you have any questions later. But again, I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis. Member Stokel?
Yes, I have a few questions. One, how long is the proposed strategic plan supposed to be? Is it a 5-year plan? Do you know?
We didn't actually put a time frame on it. We understand that the reason we don't put You're talking about my plan, right? The plan we developed?
Yes, and the one in our agenda packet as well. So
Yeah.
I was looking through it, and there's,
We did not add time, and one of the reasons I'm not adding time right now is that I understand that a lot of communities are resource constrained. So we didn't add like a specific timeline on when you want to achieve all these things. Things like, for example, if you decide to apply for that survey and do that survey, you're gonna have to get a partner like University of Central Florida or somebody that actually does that. That takes time, you know what I mean? So I don't wanna tell you that, yeah, we're gonna do this in 5 years, and then other priorities come in from the budget. So that's why I personally don't do timelines on it.
okay. It will be helpful, and maybe this is going to be more Nicholas than you, but for us, at least from my perspective, if we do have some type of timeline and benchmarks that we're reaching for, this is what I do at my job currently. So that's why I ask. I think it's important for us to be able to monitor and track our progress of what we're doing. So that was one. And then you did mention the Business Education Task Force. This might just be more educational than a question, but at the college locally here, Eastern Florida State College that you mentioned, there's advisory boards there where we invite industries to come in. So it might be a good idea for us to be a part of that already existing structure.
And then maybe, yeah.
And then, did you, during this analysis, look at our currently, where we have commercial and industrial areas within the community?
Yeah. We
Okay.
do corridor by corridor.
Okay.
And each corridor has the percentage of land, the percentage of vacant land. Not all of it looks exactly like entitlements, but we do also, one of the things that we also did for you, we have a land use capacity analysis, which is part of the project. So that basically kind of compares what is forecasted to be the demand for like, employees for different industries versus what the land use that you have right now. So we did look at it. Some of your industrial sites, so that you know, have a lot of wetlands. So that's usually a hindrance to economic development. The way to clear those is to basically do like a wetland delineation and see what type of wetlands there really are. But we did look at every little corridor that you have, and each one of them has like different maps, and it has everything. And we look at every little business you had to.
Okay. And again, this might not be council's wishes, but I think for me, it would be nice to see if maybe we prioritized those areas and try to incentivize perhaps the ones that aren't wetlands first, focusing on those to try to avoid the live local and residential, because I appreciated what you said. Residential won't be the economic boost that I think that we're craving here. And I think that we really want to capitalize on those properties and try to bring some of these industries here. So I appreciated that. And then I think I had one more question. Okay, and you noted the 10 corridors, and I think you stated that within there you rated those areas as well, maybe where we can prioritize which ones to focus on.
Yeah, on our case, it depends on what you call them prioritizing. There's the ones that actually need some redevelopment. We did see a lot of, and it's funny because they're parallel to each other. US 1 has a lot of very nice redevelopment going on. And then parallel to it, you go to Hopkins, and Hopkins, there's a level of vacancy there that frankly is a little unacceptable. And we definitely, one of the recommendations we had was to actually go and do some kind of like a corridor analysis.
Okay.
Where you can do more like a windshield survey of the area. But on our side, what we're gonna be doing, with our grant, we are able to go in and do an assessment and look at corridors. Why do corridors? Like I said, corridors are like the span of economic development. As part of our Brownfields program, we're calling ourselves the Resilient Corridors Coalition because we're actually developing a whole methodology of how to look at corridors and how to the idea will be that at some point we're gonna be able to provide specific strategies for each corridor. So you're gonna be kind of one of our pilot projects, hopefully.
Okay, that sounds interesting, because as you were saying that, I was thinking it might be good for us to potentially order of priority. Should we focus on US 1? Should we focus on Garden Street 95 exit? Where are those major areas?
Overall, I have to say, your corridors are pretty solid. Like, we were actually I've been to other cities where I'm like, oh my God, what happened here? overall, your corridors seem to be, US 1 is one of your older corridors. The level of investment there is really obvious to us. You know what I mean? And it's definitely, it's something we want to replicate in the city. Garden Street is a little older. There are other strategies that I didn't go into here. The plan is a little more detailed. We're asking, for example, ways you can live in an area, because Garden Street is like much closer to downtown, I believe, than the other corridors. So maybe one thing that I always think of Garden Street, one of the recommendations we have is to basically look at the feasibility of doing some like outdoor type of arena. I was able to visit Detroit back in 2023. And it was really interesting because in their downtown, you go in and there's this block that's like magical. That's completely different from the rest of it. And it has a lot of amenities, and what the community uses it, the word advertising was just Shakespeare in the Park, for example. And they're using that facility for that. It's not like a big arena that you have to really like maintain. It's just basically just an area within the city where you're able to host that type of events.
Okay.
And in Titusville, it's going to look a little different, but I just want to give you an example of that.
No, and I appreciate that because that Garden Street corridor, I think, has been really difficult for us to try to. And the other one on 50, like we got Walmart, then Starbucks came and other developments followed. And that Garden Street one, it's been, people will try and then it closes down, and it's been tough for us. So, okay, I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Stokel. Member Moscoso?
Thank you. Thank you so much for this. This was excellent. I am so impressed. I feel like every new council member should get this. I learned a lot. Sarah, I'm with you on the benchmarks. I think we definitely need to have that. This is such good information. I would hate for this to be the only time we discuss it. So I don't know if it'd be possible for us to have a workshop on it where we could go through and discuss it piece by piece, because what I would hate is that we see this and then it gets handed over to the staff and then out of sight, out of mind. And I was even thinking, I don't know, for me on council, sometimes I feel like I'm all over the place, like I've got my feet in this area, in this area. And as I was going through this, I kind of divided it up into different sections. And so, there was economic development, industry growth, and some of the suggestions were a career source, working with the Chamber of Commerce, looking at manufacturing. Another one was workforce and education, so working with EFSC, working with how you talked about the zoning for childcare, things like that. So this could be something perhaps we discuss in a workshop, that each of us takes almost like a section, and that is our what we're focusing on, and maybe somebody might want to focus on all of it, but then it's more pointed, and we can kind of focus on saying, hey, I've been reaching out to Career Source, or I've been working with Brad about zoning issues so that we can make sure that there's like in-home childcare allowed in these areas. For me, I'd like to see that, but it would just help me get a focus. But thank you so much. I felt like this was wonderful, and I would love to spend more time as a group working through it.
And it's something that I have to say, you have great staff. We've been working with Brad and Nicholas for like the past year and a half, and they're great to work with. We're still here. We're in Orlando, but you are part of our region, and we usually have small amounts of money here and there that we can actually go in and use for this type of facilitation if you need one. We're willing to that we're part of the community. We're not just a consulting firm. We're here to help our communities become better and more resilient. So,
thank you very much, Member Moscoso, Mr. Lewis. We also have a special meeting on economic development in 2 weeks on November 13th at 5:30. So that'd be a great time to iron out those plans and suggestions. Vice Mayor Cole.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on Member Moscoso, because I do agree that this is a very important document for our city. So I do agree with you with some things, right? I do have a couple of questions. You talk about the level of the water rising. Are you making a suggestion that we should build a seawall or something like that too?
No, like that. This is not a vulnerability analysis.
Okay.
You're going to have a professional. You already hire a firm. I think it's called CDM Smith, Brad, that you hired? Geosyntek. GeoCenter will actually provide you those recommendations.
Okay.
What we're saying on the economic side is that, hey, let's look at your corridors, and when we do any type of investment, that you actually consider the importance of these economic corridors for your, basically the well-being of the community. Yeah, I wouldn't, if I were doing urbanity analysis, yeah, I would probably recommend you infrastructure or something like that, but that's something that will come on when the plan is due.
Okay, and the other question I had was, you talked about residential intrusion, and I know we have various housing areas which are going up, but when I talk to some of the corporations that are coming in, the people aren't moving to Titusville. So I'm not sure if there's a ratio between the number of residential units and the corporations that come in?
We did had one in your report, and I believe, and it showed that you have more residential units than what you had in number of jobs. Part of that, because you're located so close to the lagoon, you get a lot of people who basically buy a lot of condos to basically come here on the weekend. That affects some of that analysis. We heard a couple of stories. That's why we love doing these focus groups, because we talk to the community. One of the builders said that the issue is that he doesn't think there's enough housing, enough new housing coming in. And I think that there's a lot of development coming, I believe, mostly in the south and the west, that will help that. I can also tell you, this is anecdotal completely, but one of our co-workers, her daughter got married to an engineer from Blue Origin, and they actually chose to live here in Titusville. And they bought one of the older house. They're a fixer-upper. They're fixing it. So you're attracting. I think that a lot of communities usually have the same conversation you're having. People think, oh, you're not moving. I had situations like, for example, I did a similar analysis for Cocoa and similar analysis for Palm Bay. There you actually show the flows of people, like basically coming in and leaving Titusville based on commuter data. We didn't see that here that much. Yeah, could you actually be more competitive if you have some residential, newer residential? Hey, probably, you will, everybody will. You know what I mean? Especially with all the new jobs that you're coming in, it will be good for you to attract more residents. And I think that you're attracting what you need to attract. But with residential intrusion, the problem we have usually is that planners, we really know this, understand this, because if you have an industrial piece of property, you basically have about maybe a high industrial, for example, or a intermediate industrial. You have about maybe 20 uses you can do. You get residential close in, about half of those uses are going to be gone, because you're going to have to basically protect those residents. That's what we mean with resident intrusion.
Okay.
And we get really concerned. I know before the November Economic Development Zone left, there was some new investments coming in, because I think one of the issues you have is sewer right now, especially on US 1. And we help the November Economic Development Zone prepare kind of the analysis why they should invest in this infrastructure. Again, each community is going to have a different set of problems. From what I heard here, we definitely appreciate this community. We think you have a lot of assets that you can really exploit. It's a matter of believing that you can do it. You know what I mean?
Thank you very much.
Thank
Vice
you.
Mayor Cole, are you done? Member Nelson?
I just wanted to add one thing for Megan. Space Coast EDC, Nick belongs to, I belong to. And that's one of the things they're working on is workforce development. And they are partnering with the businesses and the educational facilities to get those certifications, line it up, figure out what's needed, and make sure that we have it. One of the things that I was thinking of as we were talking about it, you said there were economic opportunities in some of the lower income areas. Mm-hmm. And we have the Moore Center And we could offer CPT classes there, those kind of classes that might encourage some of the people to get out and get a job and start.
I can tell you, I do have experience as a volunteer during workforce development, especially with low-income communities. The approach, it's gonna change. You cannot just think that you're gonna offer a certification and people are just gonna jump to the certification. Some people are gonna need kind of like a program that sort of builds their self-esteem first.
Right.
And actually goes and works and prepares them to actually go into the certification. This happens a lot, especially with minority communities.
Okay.
We have, and I tell you, I've been volunteering with I did volunteer for Just Partnership for 12 years. Like I saw a lot of people that I work with, and definitely establishing that job-rich program is something that you are going to have to evaluate, and usually it won't be led by the city. The idea here, Jobs Partnership, the model basically is kind of partnership between the nonprofit and churches, local churches. So we did point out a couple of what we think will be the stakeholders in one of your census tracts. Those will be actually the organizations that should be doing this type of program. It's usually not, government helps, but it's not government-led.
So do you guys have a program that we could use?
It's not mine, yeah. I have a good friend that does it, and I can ask him, hey, are you ready to go to Brevard County? It's a conversation, because I had it with him in Sanford too. And it's a really good program. They just celebrate 25 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Member Nelson. Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis. We appreciate you coming here before us. I know I appreciated our conversation along with your director, and I think it was Jennifer. And we talked about the business incubator program with UCF, and I think I found a place for them to land, and hopefully we'll get that call in the book.
And I'll be very happy if you do, because we're really rooting for the city of Titusville to do well.
Thank you very much.
Definitely.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Definitely. Anything else you need, you have my contact information, but thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we're at the petitions and requests, non-agenda items, and we're still in our 5:30 meeting. So this is not the official city council meeting. This is a special presentations meeting. But anybody for petitions and requests for this meeting before we adjourn for our next meeting? Thank you. Come on, Stan. You're up.
As you know, I'm Stan Johnson. I'm a registered professional engineer, and I'm allowed to speak about item 4C, Economic Development Strategic, which was just presented by Mr. Lewis Norris. I can't pronounce his name. Pardon? Okay, he's got it. So the problem is that I've had a big problem, or let's say the city of Titusville has had a big problem with the ECFRPC. Big time, big time. Please listen this time. So what they had is that the ECFRPC, along with Eddie Galindo and Brad Parrish, created a Resiliency Titusville, I think it was called 2019, which is completely false. Completely false. You should know about it. In other words, when he's shaking his head, he knows absolutely nothing about it. So I complained. I complained about this fraudulent document that I'm talking about that was created by this company, which the city of Titusville is paying for. Is paying for this.
Mr. Johnson, please direct your comments up to the dais.
Okay. Well, you should be listening to it, because he should be listening to it. I don't know why he's walking away. But the thing is big. So I went to all the workshops for this sustainability project, all the workshops right here in Titusville. And I made all kinds of comments about it, the problems with the drainage and so forth and like that. So what happened is when they published it and signed it and everything by the city and by this group, it completely left out hours and hours and hours of work we did in workshop. Neglected it completely. Has to do with, for example, stormwater. Stormwater, the problem that I presented many times in sustainability. So I don't know why he'd be leaving, which is crazy to me. Because I'm telling you, so what I did is I complained to our human resources director, and they found me in favor, and so they made an amendment to it. Brad Parrish was disciplined for his dishonesty. I'm saying dishonesty. And now we're going again with this group right here, and I think you should listen to what I'm saying, is that what I did was I filed a complaint against their professional engineer about this study, which is completely false. So what happened is that he argued, he said, well, I never said anything in public about this problem. Never said anything. So it was dismissed. Although it was dismissed, is that what I'm saying, that East Central Florida Regional Planning Council was dishonest, big time, big time, big time. And they completely lost it. And so what the city did is they changed it. I would like another 2 minutes to explain this.
Thank you.
I'm disappointed that you're not going to listen. Sorry. No, thank you.
Anybody else for petitions and requests for our 5:30 meeting? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned. We will reconvene in, what do you say, 5 minutes, guys? 5 minutes for our 6:30 meeting. Thank you.